You done?
Got 30 minutes to stop that.
Guess I never considered that. With like Airbnbs and VRBOs, you can like put on there like it's a really quiet community. I mean, you can be very descriptive and regulatory like that. Am I right?
You can. But we have.
Come on.
We've got ordinances that also cover it, so they have to comply with the ordinance, whether they put it on their thing or not, so. Hey,
Are we okay not wearing our masks, Chairman?
yeah,
I'll try not to look anybody.
We're not wearing our masks.
I've
Right,
got,
you're the boss.
I'm ready to go.
Mayor's wearing his mask. He is the boss.
I'm ready to go if you're ready to go. I'm ready, you ready? Did a double one just because we have such a full schedule tonight. It is 6 o'clock. This is the Planning Commission meeting for Tokerville on, what is today? April 14th at 6 p.m. We do have a full agenda tonight, so we'll try and move through it. I am going to be holding you fairly tight on the public forum portion of this, where you have to come to the mic and spend 3 minutes, maximum of 3 minutes, and that's on any item that is not on the agenda tonight. Okay, we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Commissioner Lee.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do want to thank everybody for being here, both in public and here in attendance, as well as on the YouTube. Do we have any disclosures or declarations of conflicts from any of the commission members for any item on the agenda tonight?
Nothing for me.
Okay, has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting?
Yep.
Any changes required? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve meetings from March.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, now is the time we'll open it to public forum. Again, please come up to the podium, state your name and the location where you live in Tokerville. And it's any subject that is not on tonight's agenda, anything you would think that we should look at. And limit your time to 3 minutes, please. Well, that was easy. Okay, reports. I just have one that we submitted the MPDO document to the city council. They have made recommendations and sent it back without taking a vote on it. So we'll be discussing that this evening in the discussion items. Do we have any reports from any of the other commissioners? I will for Commissioner Tomzik. We're going to table just so we know when we get there, the discussion item on the sign regulations where he was tasked with that. And he has a family issue tonight, so won't be in attendance, so we'll review that next month. Mr. Versamak.
I have nothing for the commission tonight, unless you have questions.
I've got a couple, but it's on items in our agenda, so we'll get to those when we get there. Councilman Chaves.
I have nothing at this point.
No other input than what I received, the 2 comments on the MPDO at last week's meeting. I'll take that as a no. Okay. Under item E on public hearing, our first item on we seek Public input is sought on a nightly rental application submitted by Mary Ann Bate for a nightly rental located at 80 North Coker Boulevard, tax ID number T-32-A-2. The zoning is R112. Mr. Versamak, you want to cover the, we'll get that down in there. Do we have any public comments on that? If we do, Mr. Turner, you had on that item,
Sorry, say that again.
public input?
Yes, would you like me to read that now?
Yes, if you would.
Okay, so there's two letters that were sent. The first one is from Sherry Hunter Thomas. It says, please deny the nightly rental application submitted by Mary Ann Bate. There is no compelling reason to approve the nightly rental application submitted by Mary Ann Bate for a nightly rental located at 80 North Toker Boulevard, tax ID T-32-A-2. Zoning is R1-12. My husband and I own the property located at 68 North Toker Boulevard, tax ID T-31. Our property is immediately adjacent to the Bates property. We purchased the property in 1998 from my mother, Mary Alice Bringhurst Hunter, whose father, M. William Bringhurst, purchased the property in the early 1900s and built the house currently standing on the property. Although the property is currently rented, it is our intent to eventually use the property as our retirement home. We purchased the property because we wanted the benefits of living in the quiet little town of Tokerville. We want our children and grandchildren to be able to come and visit in a safe and secure environment. However, allowing the proposed use jeopardizes the safety and security of the neighborhood. We would no longer be able to freely allow our grandchildren outside because we would never know who is out there, nor what the intent is of the nightly renters. Traffic and parking are significant concerns as well. Since such rentals generally do not have on-site supervision, they are frequently used as party houses, which bring with it noise and safety issues as well. To address the many concerns about nightly rentals that have arisen in my current community, the city of Las Vegas, such rentals are now limited to owner-occupied 3-bedroom or less properties, and the owner is required to be on site. Zoning laws and ordinances are enacted for specific purposes, and property owners are entitled to rely on those zoning laws and ordinances. The property is located in an area zoned R-1-12, which means that it is zoned for single-family residential. It is not an area zoned for nightly rentals. A nightly rental usage is not single-family residential. There is no economic necessity for such a land use. There are thousands of motel rooms in Washington County, all of them designed to meet the needs of the nightly rental market. The proposed use is incompatible with existing ordinances, provides a safety and security concern, is not conducive to the quiet enjoyment that is expected for properties located in single-family residential zones, and the application should be denied. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you, Sherry Hunter Thomas, 1561 Windhaven Circle, Las Vegas. And then the second one is from Mariana Stewart, also known as Tersa Stewart. We fully support those in Tokerville who want to use their property for nightly rentals, especially, but not exclusively, when it is in or adjacent to their personal residence. This brings a current of economic activity to Tokerville that is modest in its impact and closely monitored and regulated by the owner. We hope the city will not restrict property rights on this matter. Our best to Mary Ann Bate and her endeavor, Jacob and Tersa Stewart, 132 North Toker Boulevard.
And I should have asked, is Mary Ann Bate or a representative here? If you wouldn't mind coming up and telling us a little bit about your property and what your intent is.
Yes, and I know it's for 1 bedroom, 2 people. I don't see that would be a party house. Yes,
Mary Ann, you're going to continue living in the residence, and you just be letting out one of your rooms.
there's only an officer only be there.
Right.
So 1 person and 2 other people, that's 3 people?
Parking off streets available.
Driveway and garage.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yes, sir.
Lynn Chamberlain, 45 North Toker Boulevard. Live across the street and just a little bit south of Mary Ann, have done for a lot of years. Right now, addressing Sherry Hunter Thomas's objection to the nightly rental. Currently, she has that home rented to a person who is running a heavy equipment business, has semi-trucks and trailers that pull in there 2, 3, 4, or 5 times a day off of the highway, a very busy residential street. And, you know, if anything, this would bring something quiet to the neighborhood when they do move down here. It'd be much quieter than it is now. And I live right across the street from Mrs. Thomas's house. And 5:30 in the morning, the trucks are fired up. And, you know, in the summertime, if you want your windows open, you wake up with the trucks. So to me, it would be a great relief, actually, to have that nightly rental in there if it could quiet down neighbors next door just a little bit. As far as the safety concerns, the traffic that goes on there right now is far worse than anything that would ever come from a nightly rental. And as far as the city ordinances go, she is in complete compliance with what we intended with the ordinance for what city of Clifton.
Assuming we're still in the public hearing? Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm in full support as long as there's off Anita Eaton, South Toker Boulevard. Full support of her renting a room out in her home. That's just what everybody else who has I'm going to say it, bed and breakfast or a nightly rental in their home is doing. If they have extra space, why not let somebody have something that's a better environment than a hotel room to enjoy Southern Utah with. I think the only thing that I would be concerned about is off-street parking. If there is off-street parking versus on-street, would be concerned about off-street parking, just like anyone who is running nightly rental that they have off-street parking. And I can't remember what the parking situation there is. So, but I fully, I don't think the individual who lives next door or who owns the property next door to the Bates home realizes what their tenant is doing out of the property that she seems to be complaining about. She ought to bring her grandkids up and let them stay there for the night. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Do we have any other one that would like to comment, sir?
Yeah, I have a comment. Not really. Quiet.
Please come up to the mic, give your name and where
It's
you live.
because it's recording.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
People at home are watching it as well, so.
Hi, guys. So I just was really bugged by that first letter. The first I'm sorry, my name's Craig Smith. I'll be addressing my Airbnb rental next after Mary Ann. But I was bugged by that letter, that comment. Like, she says, I see no compelling reason to allow this. Well, this is America. This is freedom. We try and allow people to do things that they want to do. And unless there's a sound good reason not to, that's the reason. So that's all.
Anyone else? Okay. Item E2, public input is sought on a nightly rental application submitted by Craig Smith for a nightly rental located at 276 West Mount Charm Road, tax ID number T-MTC-1-4, zoning is R120. Mr. Smith, would you like to get up and tell us a little bit about yours?
So I just moved here last year. I'm on Mount Charm Road, and it's just me and my girlfriend and my daughter and her kids living there now. My daughter's going to be moving out in at the end of next month, and so we got a lot of extra room in the house and figured I'd make money by renting part of it. It's actually laid out perfectly to be able to do that, and I've Airbnb before. I know how to be a super host. I've been a super host the whole time I did it for about 2 years, and you have to be respectful and you have to take care of things, and that's what I've done. So if there's any questions, I'm open to them.
Thank you. You want to read in the two?
Yep. Ruth Evans, dear sir, or to Ruth Evans, sorry. To read that. She just printed that out. Dear Sir or Madam, in regards to the proposed nightly rental request submitted by Craig Smith located at 276 West Mount Charm Road, our only reservation is regarding loud music and parties during the evening and past 10:30 p.m. We have had a conversation with Craig Smith regarding noise, and he agrees and understands our concern. After our conversation, he agreed to make every effort to control excessive noise. We feel it is important to be good neighbors and discuss issues before they are problems. Regards, Richard and Vicky Ott, 286 West Mount Charm Road. Thank you. Planning Commission, I strongly object to having another short-term nightly rental on our little cul-de-sac on Mount Charm. We already have Chaves, a couple of homes down from me. I have Whitings behind me on Peachtree. There is one on Sunset and one on the corner of Adams and Westfield. I think it's time for Tokerville to put a cap on more of these nightly rentals. We're becoming a neighborhood of strangers. Along with increased traffic, noise, and unfamiliar faces, on Mount Charm, the majority of homeowners are seniors. A few of us live alone. Short-term rentals are a threat to the sense of security. These short-term nightly rentals should not be allowed in residential areas as they ruin the sense of community and authenticity that our neighborhoods have. Sincerely, Kathy A. Dodson, 275 West Charm Road.
Do we have any other public comments to this item?
My name is Doreen Christensen. I am the girlfriend of Craig Smith. One thing that I had even said to the Ox before was Mount Charm is not a senior community. It is not Sun River. It is not a 55 plus older. If that needs to be the case, maybe things need to be changed on that road. However, it is not a 55 plus community, even though that is what mostly lives there. That is not what it is zoned as. If you want to live in a senior community, please feel free to move to plenty of them that are in St. George or surrounding areas. I mean, it just doesn't seem fair to me that just because that's what the neighborhood is, that just needs to be the standard when that's not the regulation.
Larry Bennett, I'm 649 Westfield, across the street from Craig. Met him a few months ago, and I think he's a stellar improvement to the community. I know most of the people, I've been here for 20 years. I know a lot of the people that have bed and breakfasts, various rental type places. I've never heard of any conflict with any of them anywhere. I've got an acre of property. If they need extra parking, they can come across the street, park on my property. I don't have a problem with that. Because I think, like Craig says, this is America, things are free. I was here when this whole thing went down about Sun River building 2,800, 3,500 homes up here. Probably nobody in this room that just says, boy, I'm sure happy with that happening. But we're doing it, so you just don't get to control all those things. But to me, the big thing is what kind of people are these? Because they're living in the home. I found Craig to be a very honorable man. He lets people come and swim in his swimming pool, and I think if they get noisy, he'll go out and quiet them down and whatever it takes to do that. So I think that's the crux of all of it, is just how good are you at being a good neighbor to everyone. So that's my contribution to this.
Any other on this item? Okay.
With Gary Chaves on that street and they average the ages out, it would be like a 75 plus community.
Comment on it. So just
Strike that from the record.
even if we agree with them, we don't comment. Okay. Okay. Public hearing E, item 3, public input is sought on a conditional use permit application submitted by David Lundell for a woodworking shop located at 140 West Sunset Avenue, tax ID number T-142-A-7. The zoning is AG, which is agricultural. Is Mr. Lundell here? You want to come up and tell us a little bit about your property, please?
I'm just hoping to start a wood shop, and that's it. What else do you need to know?
Whatever you feel would help the people understand what you're doing.
So I quite enjoy building furniture, and I've gotten quite a bit of attention for it, and it's to the point where I either need to start a business and start selling it, or I need to find more space to store it. So,
Okay.
So can I ask you a few questions?
yeah.
What, are you going to have any customers coming to your business, or is it just a place to
I'm
build?
not a people person, so that will not be on the agenda.
Okay. So all you're asking for then is just a place to do the woodworking?
I have a shop in the backyard that I build furniture in. I just want to make it a business.
Okay.
I need a business address.
Do we have any public comment on this one? Okay. Have a public hearing on item 4, which is public input is sought on the preliminary plat application submitted by Wall-to-Wall Construction for a 12 residential lot subdivision. Tax ID number is T-91-A-1-A-1 and T-91-A-1-A-2. Zoning is R120. Do we have a representative from Wall-to-Wall here?
My name is Troy Wall. We're representing the little subdivision there, but it's pretty straightforward, matches the zoning already there. It's just basically a continuation of the 12 lots that was the first phase.
Yeah.
So it should be pretty straight up.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this? Okay. That'll complete our public hearing for the 4 items. Then we'll go into the section F, the business items. We have a annual renewal of the conditional use permit for a dance and fitness studio located at 86 East Kolob Circle. The applicant is Natalie Cheney. And for that, there was no complaints on this property, on this conditional use.
Wasn't there a comment saying that the business license hasn't been renewed yet?
Oh, that's what I'm trying to find.
I'm pretty sure that's what it said. For both.
There's no complaints, does not have a 2021 business license. So do we have any motions on this item?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for item
F1?
F1, contingent upon renewal of the business license for 2021.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll second that.
Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Business item number 2, annual renewal of a home occupation permit for a home construction plan design business located at 10 Berry Lane. The applicant is Terry Watson. There are no complaints, but does not have a 2021 business license.
What does he do? Home construction plan design?
It's
Like
plan
he's a drafter?
design, plan design, so
That's it.
computer work.
I'll make a motion to approve item F2 contingent upon the business license renewal.
I'll second that.
Any other comments? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that'll pass. Item 3, discussion of possible recommendation on a nightly rental application submitted by Mary Ann Bate for a nightly rental located at 80 North Toker Boulevard. Tax ID number T-32-A-2. Zoning is R112.
Can I ask a question? Mary, are you still here? So you are living on the property. You don't have any intentions of leaving. You're gonna.
Let's hold off on that for a little while, Mary Ann. Can we vote on that?
Okay. On the what? Okay, we do have staff comments on this. If we want to run through those really quick. Discussion, the applicant has submitted an application for nightly rental permit located at 80 North Toker Boulevard. The property is approximately 0.48 acres. It's currently zoned R112. The application is complete and the matter will be discussed on the March 24, 2021 staff meeting. The application was reviewed and discussed on the March 24, 2021 staff meeting, and the following comments were made. Fire district will need to be, okay, Mike. There will need to be an inspection of the premises prior to the issuance of a permit. The sewer district sewer fee will be increased from the residential rate to the commercial rate. Building department, there will need to be an inspection of the premises prior to issuing of a permit. The required parking spaces per code will need to be provided. Any alterations to the building shall conform to the requirements of the historic district. The applicant stated she would like to permit up to 2 people. The application will be heard on the April 14, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, and a public hearing will be held. Standards for review. The standards for review of a nightly rental application are as follows. Each nightly rental must occur within and under one roof of a dwelling and not in the structure that is temporary. Applicant must provide sufficient off-street parking spaces for all guests and residents. There shall be an overnight overnight on-street parking by guests or residents.
Should be
That's no, correct, Mike?
Typo.
Going, what, that changed? Okay. Maximum number of occupants per dwelling being used for nightly rental shall be the lesser of the 10, including the owner and his or her family, or that which is allowed by any safety code adopted by the city. The owner must meet the residency requirements and have an emergency contact on file of a Tokerville resident in the event the owner is unavailable or absent. Modifications to the appearance and size of the dwelling to accommodate and facilitate a nightly rental should be in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood within which the dwelling is located. The holder of a nightly rental permit shall maintain and provide upon request the name, address, and phone number of all renters. Applicant must apply for and obtain a business license pursuant to Title III, Chapter 1 of this code and pay the current transient room tax applicable to motels and hotels within the city. Applicant is required to pay all fees required, including the annual nightly rental permit fee to maintain the permit. Applicant and permit holders are required to ensure that the dwellings in which a nightly rental occurs complies with all local, state, and national health codes, regulations, and requirements. Signs for nightly rentals shall conform to the requirements of Chapter 22 of this title. After the completion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission shall conduct a finding of fact on this application to ensure that it meets the requirements listed above. If this permit is approved, staff recommends the following conditions to be listed on the permit. Number 1, the permit is good for up to 2 guests. Number 2, the applicant agrees to abide by all regulations set forth herein and those stipulated in Section 1017(3) of this code. The applicant agrees to provide the required off-street parking spaces for both residents and guests. The permit shall receive an annual review from the Tokerville Planning Commission. The permit shall not be enlarged, expanded, or changed otherwise without express written permission of the city of Tokerville. Any alterations made to the outside of the dwelling shall be made in conformance with the conditions outlined in the historic district overlay zone. So, go ahead. Come up to the mic if you would.
I'm just asking for some clarification. Anita Eaton. You said that the sewer connection needed to be upgraded from a residential. Is that applicable to all other? Okay, this is the first time I've heard that because I didn't recall that it was upgraded to others. I mean, anyway. So upgrades from a residential sewer connection to a commercial.
Not the physical connection.
Right.
And what? The rate? I know the connection remains the same, but for additional usage, I know others can put up towards 10 bodies in the home, that includes, but anyway, never mind.
We actually debated this quite a while, didn't we, Ms. Bates?
I just don't recall that with others. Yeah.
Yes. For this resident, yes. That is what she has requested, and that's what the permit is limited to. For 2 renters, correct, Mike? Right, not to 2 people total in the home. Go ahead and come up to the mic, please.
I just don't think that's reasonable because when I was married, there was Larry and I and 7 children. Well, yeah, we used a lot more water then. Now there's me and 2 other people. We will not be using half the amount of water there was before. So just because it's going to be a small business, I just think that's wrong to say, fine, you're paying $5 more a month just because. I'm just saying that's not right. I think you can look at the person's water bill and say, hey, hold it, it's gone up. Yes, you do need to pay $5 more because I agree with that. That's reasonable. But I think the other, just because, I just think that's not reasonable. That's not right.
To be quite honest, that's probably an issue you should bring up with the city council.
Okay.
Who would address that.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, with the sewer district.
It's not you, it's the sewer. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Fourth Thursday. 6 o'clock at the sewer district on the way to the San.
Mary Ann, I have one question for you. On your property, you have a single driveway with the garage in front of it.
Correct.
If you're gonna do 2 cars, do you have like a plan, like are you gonna,
Yes.
because one car is gonna be boxed in at all times?
Exactly.
Yours, but
Yes.
is that,
That's going to have to be a verbal agreement with whoever's there. So.
Have you ever had, as far as you've lived in that home, have you guys ever had, we already have a noise ordinance for Tokerville City that we're required to abide by. Have you ever had the police call on you for being rowdy?
No. You can ask anybody that knows me. We're not really that rowdy. No. Do you remember? He saved my daughter. She was on top of my roof. And there was a babysitter there, but it wasn't doing this job.
For fire issues, when there's 2 cars and they're boxed in and it's a business, I don't know how that works unless both vehicles. And the parking was my question or concern as well. If it's a business, if they don't have a separate ability to get in and out, then that requires the owner of the residence to park on the street, which pushes parking onto the street in a small skinny street as it is. What if anything is our code or the fire department's issue can deal with that, if anything?
Well, with this nightly rental, there can be no parking on the street. So, and the fire department will do an inspection prior to it being issued, and they'll have to fall within the codes of the fire department. So
the renters can't park on the street, but
Right.
the owners can park on the street.
there can be no parking in the street when they've turned it into a commercial business. So let's kind of go through these on the standard review for each item. Each nightly rental must occur within and under one roof, and according to your drawing, that's not an issue. Applicant must provide sufficient off-street parking. I think we just covered that you and the guests have to be able to park on the property, not on the street. Maximum number of occupants per the dwelling being used for nightly rental shall be lesser than 10 people. 10, that's you and the renters, which sounds like it's going to be a maximum of 3. Owner must meet the residency requirements and have emergency contact on file with a Tokerville resident in the event the owner is unavailable or absent. You will comply with that. Modifications of the appearance and size of the dwelling to accommodate and facilitate nightly rental should be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood within which the dwelling is located, which is a bit of an extra item on you where you're in the historic district. Changing anything on the exterior. Do you see any reason that you would need to do that?
I'm just going to put a door on the back of that house with the window existing.
Okay.
So I'll change it.
The holder of the nightly rental permit shall maintain and provide upon request the name, address, and phone number of all renters. So I assume you're going to keep a log when you check them in. Applicant must apply for and obtain a business license. Have you done that yet? Okay, you'll need to do that. Applicant is required to pay all fees, including the annual nightly rental permit fee, and maintain the permit. You're prepared to do that. Applicant and permit holder are required to ensure that dwellings in which nightly rental occurs complies with local, state, and national health code regulations and requirements. Have you researched that and you will comply? Signs for nightly rental shall conform to the requirements chapter 22 of this title. If you're going to put a sign out, there is a specific requirement that you, for the size of the sign and type of sign you can use. Okay. Mike, do you have any other questions from staff?
I can't see any other reasons, but I would like to see if the motion is made to recommend approval, that before the permit is issued, she will provide proof of inspection from the fire district and this.
Okay.
Yeah, the city requires that anyway. When you come in to get a business license, they require that you bring it in. It's all part of the process.
And all of that has to occur before you can rent it out. Okay. All right, any comments from any of the commissioners on this one? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the nightly rental for Mary Ann Bate
I'll second that.
with staff comments.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That will be, yeah, I'm quiet when I say my aye. I run out of breath when I'm calling. Okay. Our next item. Item 4 is discussion possible recommendation on a nightly rental application submitted by Craig Smith for a nightly rental located at 276 West Mount Charm Road, tax ID number T-MTC-1-4. Zoning is R120. Staff comments on this one. Discussion, the applicant has applied for a nightly rental permit at 276 Mount Charm Road. The property is approximately 0.46 acres. It's currently zoned R120. The application is complete and the matter will be discussed on March 24th, 2021 staff meeting. The application was discussed at March 24th, 2021 staff meeting, and the following comments were given. Fire district, there will need to be an inspection of the premises prior to issuance of the permit. Sewer district, the sewer fee will increase from the residential rate to the commercial rate. Building department, there will need to be an inspection of the premises prior to the issuing of permit. Planning department, the required parking spaces per code will need to be provided. The applicant stated that he would like a permit for up to 6 people. This application will be heard at the April 14, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, and a public hearing will be held. Standards for review. The standards for review of the nightly rental application are as follows. Each nightly rental must occur within and under one roof of the dwelling and not in a structure that is temporary. B is applicant must provide sufficient off-street parking spaces for all guests and residents. There shall be an Mike, we got to correct that one. No overnight on-street parking by guests or residents. Maximum number of occupants per the dwelling being used for a nightly rental shall be the lesser of 10, including the owner and his or her family, or that which is allowed by any safety code adopted by the city. Owner must meet the residency requirements and have an emergency contact on file of a Tokerville resident in the event the owner is unavailable or absent. Modifications to the appearance and size of the dwelling to accommodate and facilitate nightly rental should be in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood within which the dwelling is located. The holder of the nightly rental permit shall maintain and provide upon request the name, address, and phone number of all renters. Applicant must apply for and obtain a business license pursuant to Title III, Chapter 1 of this code, and pay the current transient room tax applicable to motels and hotels within the city. Applicant is required to pay all fees required, including the annual nightly rental permit fee to maintain a permit. Applicant and permit holders are required to ensure that the dwellings in which a nightly rental occurs complies with local, state, and national health code regulations and requirements. Signs for nightly rental shall conform to the requirements of Chapter 22 of this title. After the completion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission shall conduct a finding of fact on this application to ensure that it meets requirements listed above. If this permit is approved, staff recommends that the following conditions be listed on the permit. The permit is good for up to 6 guests. The applicant agrees to abide by all regulations set forth herein and those stipulated in section 1017-3 of this code. The applicant agrees to provide the required off-street parking spaces for both residents and guests. The permit shall receive an annual review by the Tokerville Planning Commission, and the permit shall not enlarge, expand, or change otherwise without express written permission from the city of Tokerville.
Mr. Cameron?
Sure.
Could I have a modification? I'm sorry.
Craig Smith, could I have a modification to that number of people to stay there? I was thinking of heads and beds. There's actually beds for 6, but I got a pack and play, and you know how people have babies around here. There could be a lot of little kids too. So I'd like to try and just have it stick to that maximum or maximum of 10, if that's okay. Just because kids on the floor, I don't care about that.
I don't think that.
Okay.
The overall thing is,
The
you know,
10
10
is the big
10
one.
max, so I don't know that, even for Marianne Bate, I don't know that limiting 2 other than parking is really restrictive. It's the 10 overall that
So
me.
let me ask you this, Mr. Smith, do you have how many rooms that you're renting?
It's one long room. So there's 2 queen beds, and then there's a hide-a-bed as well. So it's 6 adults comfortable. Yeah. It's a hide-a-bed kind of thing.
What you're saying?
Well, I could throw kids everywhere.
This at some point.
10 is the number I'd like to qualify. Yeah, if that's okay. Yeah.
Mr. Smith, you just need to understand that the 10 includes the occupants of the house, includes you and your girlfriend.
Oh, does it? Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
How many people are going to live in the home?
Well, then I guess 8 would be the max, right? 8 renters and then us that are there already.
So we can, Mike, you feel we're good to go ahead and adjust that to 8 on the permit? Yeah, with a total of 10. So.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that number meant the owner too. Thank you.
Is the applicant required to show how and where they're going to park?
Well, and that was, we're going to run through each one of these the same way we did on the first one, so. And there is a drawing that was submitted.
That I didn't see. That was just.
That's just the interior of the. All right, so let's go through this. It is under one roof. We've got your drawing of the residence. The applicant must provide sufficient off-street parking, and that is not shown that I can see.
It's in the
How, is it?
I can also verify
Oh, there
there's
it is.
plenty of parking on this property.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a 3-car garage right there. So that's 3 cars of concrete. Plus you could go double. You could have 6 cars on that driveway. Plus you could have cars on that right side. It's gravel there. So there's plenty of room for parking.
Well, the maximum number of occupants we just covered shall be less than the 10 for the maximum of everybody in the residence with 8 renters. Okay?
Okay.
Owner must meet the residence requirements and have an emergency contact on file of a Tokerville resident in the event the owner is unavailable. You've got somebody.
No problem. Yeah.
The appearance and size of the dwelling to accommodate, facilitate nightly rental should be in keeping with, are you going to have to do any modifications?
No modifications.
The holder of the nightly rental permit shall maintain and provide upon a request the name, address, and phone number of renters. So you're going to have a lot check in with
The Airbnb keeps that information.
to do that. So
Well, yeah.
apply for and obtain a business license. Have you done that yet?
No.
Okay. So before you do any rentals, you'll have to take care.
And I do that here, right? I apply here for that? Okay.
Including the annual rental permit fee and maintain the permit. The applicant and permit holders are required to ensure that dwellings in which the nightly rental occurs complies with all local, state, and national health codes, regulations, and requirements. Have you checked into those at all?
No.
Okay, you'll need to do that before you come in and assure us that you have done that.
Okay.
Signs for nightly rental shall conform to requirements of chapter 22 of this.
I won't have a sign. No signage. Yeah, I don't like them either.
Okay. So I think, do we have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion that we approve or recommend approval for business item F4 with the correction of 6 to 8
And staff comments?
and staff comments.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Item 5, discussion of possible recommendation of conditional use permit application submitted by David Lundell for a woodworking shop located at 140 West Sunset Avenue, tax ID T-142-A-7. The zoning is agricultural. Okay, staff comments. The applicant has applied for a conditional use permit to operate a woodworking shop at 140 West Sunset Avenue. The property consists of 1.25 acres and is currently zoned agricultural 1 acre. Tokerville Code allows for conditional use permits in all zones as they are listed in the code. This particular use does not show as either a permitted or conditional use in the A1 zone. This application is complete and will be discussed at the March 24, 2021 staff meeting. The application was discussed at staff meeting on March 24, 2021. The fire district stated the proposed building and premises would not require a fire.
Would require.
Yeah. Let me start that one over. The fire district stated that the proposed building and premises would require a fire inspection before they would issue an approval. Rocky Mountain Power stated that the building had no power to it at this time. Planning Chair Dan Catlin made note that under the current ordinance, there is no allowance for a use of this type in the agricultural zone. The current conditional uses allowed in the agricultural zone are as follows: cemeteries, commercial kennels, commercial livestock operations, commercial roadside stands for sale of produce grown and sold on the premises, public utilities, residential facility for elderly persons, residential facility for persons with disabilities, riding stables, vertical storage silos, other uses similar to the above and judged to be in harmony with character and intent of the zone. This matter was scheduled for public hearing to be held on April 14, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. The standards for review. The standards for review of the conditional use application are prescribed by section 1020-4 of the Tokerville Code are as follows. Will the use result in traffic congestion or create hazards? Does the location have sufficient and adequate access for fire, police, and other safety services? Will the use exceed the obligations or financial capability of the city, and will it require a level of community services greater than which is available? Will the use cause air, water, groundwater, light, or noise pollution? Does the site have a critically expensive soils, high water table, slope instability, or other soil problems? Does the use comply with the minimum requirements of the zone in which it is to be located and with all other requirements of this title? Will it be compatible with the character of the surrounding neighborhood and the surrounding structures in the scale, mass, and traffic circulation? Will the applicant be responsible for posting a bond or other adequate assurances? The Planning Commission shall conduct a public hearing on this application, and conclusion of the hearing shall conduct a finding of fact and standard review. So going through this, and we had this discussion at the staff meeting. Mr. Lundell, to be quite honest on this one. I think on most areas that you're not too bad, but we'll go through them one by one. The standards for review of the under 1020-4, no conditional use permit shall be issued unless the city council finds that the application meets the following standards and conditions. protect safety and persons and property, will not result in traffic congestion and traffic hazards, has adequate and necessary access for safety services, police and fire, will not exceed the obligations or financial capability of the city. That's essentially a little bit different wording than we got. So we've gone through those, so let's take them one by one. Will it result in traffic congestions or create a traffic hazard? So you are planning on selling furniture at your residence, at the shop, correct?
Online, so it will be.
Delivery or pickup? You're selling it online. Would you deliver it then, or would they pick it up?
Some of them I would deliver, some of them I would take.
Okay, so we could have incoming vehicles, but not a significant amount. Does the location have sufficient and adequate access for fire, police, and other safety device services? Will the use exceed the obligation or financial capability of the city, or require a level of community services greater than which is available? I don't believe that's the case on this. Will it cause air, water, groundwater, light, or noise pollution with the saws you're running? Does the site have critically expansive soils, high water table, slope, instability, or other soil problems?
No.
Does it comply with, this is where you're going to run into an issue. Does the use comply with the minimum requirements of the zone in which the use is to be located and with all other requirements of this title? You did, there again, there's not a wood shop. And I'm trying to see if there's any way to tie a wood shop to any of these items, but.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I kept my mouth shut for a long time. So, Mr. Lundell, are you gonna have, you already have a shop that you're running, basically,
Oh, yeah, I've been building stuff in this shop since I was like 10.
and you've never had any noise complaints
No.
with all the saws and the lathes and stuff?
In fact, a lot of my neighbors like that.
So, is it possible the way you're going to structure your business that you could just have it your craft shop and you could potentially take these pieces of merchandise to the client? Is that feasible of you structuring your business that way?
Well,
I mean,
but you're still running the business on the property and it's not
I-
zoned for it.
mostly I just need a business address. That's what I'm looking for, a business address.
We're into code issues. We're trying to give you a business license for an agricultural. We want to be helpful. We're trying to find a way to do that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But it's zoned for ag use.
So on ag, would it be possible to have like a shop? Because I know a lot of agricultural have a shop.
The 10 that I read
Right.
and zoned agricultural, so
And a lot of those
I
are worse
see you
than
back here. I'll get to you in just a second.
What's that?
worse in the neighborhood than your
Right.
wood shop. So it's
Right.
not a spirit of
Right. Okay.
Kind of the challenge that we're having is where it's zoned agricultural. If it was not zoned agricultural, it would work. The problem, if it was even in a residential conditional use, it would work. But the problem is your property is zoned agricultural, which is very restrictive on what you can do. And the reason is that because there's so many benefits to agricultural and different conditions that are used.
Right. And we definitely use the field, and we have it's all being used agricultural except for that shop, which I could argue that we use it for agricultural because I build things like chicken coops and farm stuff. But
That's a good question for Mike. If he is building things to sell at a business, but the business location license is somewhere else, does the city have any code issues with him building furniture on his property?
Yep.
Even if it's being built for another business outside his own? If it's something he's building that's for sale, it has to be a business license for that property?
Yeah, that was actually gone through in city council, and they've been going through that on the business licensing. If the primary work is done here in Tokerville, it is a Tokerville business, so.
I've got a concern.
Let me let Ms. Eaton talk, since she's been waving her hand.
So this might answer something. You have several businesses that are in the area, that are in the agriculture area, that are running businesses, have licenses. One of them deals with wood, and accompanied with that one with wood, it's also metal and firearms or ammunition is the tail end of it. Not that they're manufacturing ammo there, but how do you take it where one who's coming in to get a business license that is no different, what he's trying to do is no different, in fact, less of a threat to the area than the business that's 3 doors down?
If I was on the commission at the time those businesses applied and they did not fall within those items on the agricultural, then I would have not been put them forward.
I understand that. So let me just ask the question. You have an individual who has a farm, and on that farm, which is an agricultural thing, they happen to have equipment. And with that equipment, they're going to do welding because farm equipment breaks down. And most farmers do their own welding to put the shoes back on their furrow. Would you say to the farm, you can do everything about raising crops, but you cannot weld your own equipment?
It's directly related to the agricultural task. If he's taking other people's equipment and welding it as a business, then no, he cannot.
Okay, so let me ask the question. He comes in, all he wants to do is make furniture, which he's been making furniture since he was 10 years old in an agriculturally zoned piece. Now he wants to do it as a business as opposed to, just stockpiling, I guess, or making Boy Scout footstools. But you have other businesses in agriculturally zoned areas, specifically those homes that are west of the center of the road on Westfield Road that go that way, that run similar and same businesses.
Although I personally agree with you, I cannot, under this circumstance, where there's very specific items in an agricultural zone, and he comes forward with a business that is not one of those that's allowed in an agricultural zone, and put that forward. Now, if you have complaints against existing businesses in agricultural zones, then you can do a formal complaint. We can have code enforcement look at that complaint, and we could look at pulling their permit back.
Okay.
So this is a possible recommendation for a conditional use permit that goes on to the towards the you're making a recommendation to deny or not, and this goes on to the city council.
I'd like to make a comment. We shouldn't have been having a public discussion.
Right.
The public discussion is over. We need to discuss it as a commission and make a decision.
Agreed.
I would say in Mr. Lundell's case, there's other businesses in that same ag zone. There's one on his property. They've got a B&B on that property already, which does not fall under these. So I think we should make a recommendation for approval.
Okay, well, if we have a motion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for Mr. Lundell's request.
A second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay. Next item. Okay, next item on the agenda is the wall-to-wall.
It'd be interesting to see how the city council feels about us voting on intent versus letter of law. I wish I knew more about that.
So this is a second phase, and this is going to carry from where the current plots are.
So this one on the staff comments on the wall, the applicant has applied for a preliminary plat, phase 2 of the Parkside Desert Mountain subdivision. The property is currently zoned R120. Currently zoned R120, and the application calls for R120 zoning. No zone change is required. The property consists of approximately 7.91 acres with 12 lots, giving an overall density of 1.52 units per acre. The application has been deemed complete and will be reviewed at the March 24 staff meeting. The application was reviewed and discussed at the April 14, 2021 staff meeting, and the following comments were given. Hurricane Fire District is okay with the plat as presented. Ash Creek Special Services District is requiring that the sewer lift station be complete as approved. Rocky Mountain Power is okay with the plat as presented. Washington County Water Conservancy District noted that they have a 20-inch water line running through the property and like it protected during construction. They also noted that this development may need to install a dry irrigation system. Planning Commission wanted to know if the drainage has been addressed. Staff has reviewed the plat, and it appears that lots meet the size and frontage requirements of the R120 zone. Utilities are available and access to the property is adequate for police and fire protection. The copy of the plat has been sent to the city engineer for review and report. The Planning Commission shall hold a public hearing on this application, and at the conclusion of the hearing shall hold a finding of fact on the application for the preliminary plat. Standards for review: the preliminary plat shall comply with the concept plan's staff report. The preliminary engineering plan shall indicate the public services, including roads, fire, police, gas, culinary water, secondary water, sewer, electricity, telephone, and recreation are available and meet the requirements of this chapter and all applicable codes and regulations. If this application is approved, staff would recommend the following conditions. A set of construction drawings be completed and approved by staff and all affected utilities and entities. A drainage study and report be completed and delivered to the city. A geotechnical report be conducted and delivered to the city. Any review items from the city engineer will be corrected. And we do have the plat up on the wall, correct, Mike? And there was one on file. Has everybody had a chance to review that?
I had a question about this, and this is just going from where Mr. Wall, where your plat ends over to where Old Church, can meet up with Old Church, the on the south side of where Old Church will be eventually. Okay, so this is what Mr. Wall came and requested, the zone change a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we shut him down because he wanted R112, or we recommended not approving. He's come back, R120, looks pretty straightforward to me.
Any other comments? Mike, do we have anything outstanding other than?
I have not seen any review comments from the engineer. But just looking at the plat, I don't anticipate that there's any fatal flaws with this plat. I would recommend that we approve.
And on this property, confirm that it is R120 zoned around you also, right? And you're zoned R120? All right.
Can I ask a trivial question maybe? How much money do you think you would lose going from R20 or R12 back to R120? Are you going to lose a lot by having to make them bigger lots?
Right.
We're basically trying to do a little about the record. If we were to do the next phase, we're probably looking back.
Okay.
Just
Do we have any motions on this one?
Mike, the pump station gets dealt with on city council, the completion of the pump station and all that will get taken care of with the recommendation.
That's not in your staff comments or?
Part of it, I think.
Okay.
It is, we've got to go through the construction drawing process and have to do that.
Okay. This on the preliminary, so.
I'll make a motion to approve business item F6 for the preliminary plat application
I'll second that.
with staff comments.
1 second again after we put staff comments in.
I'll second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Okay. Item 7, discussion and possible recommendation on preliminary plat application submitted by SRC Land Holdings LLC for a 96 residential lot subdivision within 4 phases, tax ID number T-3-1-11-341. Zoning is R112. We did not have you guys come up and address this earlier. So if you would, or I'll go through the staff comments to start with. The applicant seeking a permission to obtain a preliminary plat on approximately 43.38 acres of property located west of Grassy Lane. This plat belongs to the parent parcel consisting of 652.26 acres. The property is currently zoned R120 and the applicant is requesting the subdivision platted at R112. Okay. Can we hold it down just a bit, folks? The property is part of the Ash Creek Crossing PDO overlay and was granted by the city of Tokerville and is governed by the development agreement associated with the city on May 12, 2008 and was subsequently amended on October 14, 2008. The agreement allows Ash Creek Crossing at a total gross density of 3,116 ERUs over the entire development parcel of 1,558 acres. As part of the development agreement, the property was rezoned from MU20 to R120, and the density allowed was based on the R120 zoning. A legal opinion rendered by the city attorney on December 28, 2020 indicates the developer does not need to seek further zone change requests if the total density for the entire 1,558 acres does not exceed the 3,116 ERUs granted by the agreement, and that further, the applicant is required to designate in their application and a statement on the final plat the number of ERUs being used by each application and the amount of ERUs which will remain after each plat.
Do you want me to read from it again?
No, I'll take a drink in a minute. The development agreement also stipulates the obligations of the parties with regards to development of the bypass road. It should further mention that the Hurricane Valley Fire District has not allowed any new subdivisions be approved in the Westfields area without the construction of secondary access to that area. The plat presented to the city of Tokerville and further described in Toker Hills Phase 1 through 4 subdivision consists of 96 lots, with all lots being at least 12,000 square feet. The lots all appear to meet the frontage requirements for the R112 lots in the Tokerville City Code. The interior roads are shown as 50-foot residential streets, which are rated to serve 250 lots. The number is exceeded in the current plat. That is no longer exceeded, is it, Mike? Because it's 96 versus 102?
Well, yes, it is provided for traffic.
Okay. The traffic plan and trip generation analysis should be made of the current and projected units and the street grids in this area. The developer needs to submit a drainage study, geotechnical report along with the traffic study. There also need and will serve letter from the water and sewer authorities. This plat should also be reviewed by the city engineer for correctness to form and format. This application was discussed at the staff meeting held January 4th, 2021. The following comments were made. The city of Tokerville and the Hurricane Fire District are concerned about the secondary access out of the Westfields area. The city of Tokerville and Ash Creek Special Services District said they had adequate facilities in place to handle the project. It was noted that the county ID number did not match that on the plat. After the staff meeting held on January 4th, 2021, the applicant did provide will serve letters from the city of Tokerville and Ash Creek Special Services District. The application will be heard at the February 10, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Public hearing will be held. It should be noted that public hearing at the city council level is also required. This application was tabled at the February 10, 2021 Planning Commission meeting because the applicant had not supplied the traffic study as required. The applicant has since provided a traffic study. The study indicates the intersections affected by this subdivision are relatively low use, high capacity intersections, and they can handle the traffic generated by this project. It should be noted that development agreement between the city of Tokerville and the developer calls for the construction traffic to use the bypass road or alternate roads other than the city streets. The conditional use will be satisfied at the time of the construction drawings and prepared and approved. The applicant has addressed comments submitted by Alpha Engineering on the review of the preliminary plat. This application was heard on March 10, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, and a public hearing was held on the matter. There were several comments from the public on this application. Questions about drainage, traffic, dust, safety, noise, hours of operation were among those items brought forth at the hearing. There were also several questions about the plat that was given to the city not matching the plat that is in the approval. The developer did admit that the plat had been changed from the original one that was given to the city. The planning commission voted to table this application until the differences in the two plats could be established and the plat that was to be corrected be reviewed by staff and the city engineer. The revised plat for Toker Hills Phase 1 through 4 was provided by the developer. The main change in the plat was the tie-in of Westfield Road to the bypass road. Lot numbering on the plat was cleaned up, and new plat reveals 96 lots total for all phases. Zoning on the new plat remains at R112, but the majority of the lots in this subdivision are larger than 12,000 square feet with an average lot size of 16,606 square feet. All lots in the subdivision meet the requirements for the size frontage of the R112 zone. The density per the plat is 2.63 lots per acre. Total allowed development parcels is 3,116. Minus the lots, these phases of 96 equal 3,020 units still available. The developer has submitted a documented outline, their intentions, and a summary of how the plan addressing the concerns that were brought forth at the Planning Commission meeting. Since the public hearing on this matter was held on March 10th, 2021, the Planning Commission meeting and the Planning Commission shall conduct a finding of fact on this application to determine the application meets the following standards of review. Does the application meet the intent of the general plan? Are there sufficient services in the area to serve the project? If not, is the developer willing to install the required services? Does the layout of lots, roadways conform to the requirements of the zone? If the Planning Commission finds the application meets the requirements and recommends that application be forwarded to the City Council with positive recommendation, the following conditions should apply. Secondary emergency access to this project must be determined. The use of public streets during construction traffic must be addressed and solved. The developer will prepare civil construction drawings for all work to be done in the construction of this project and shall have these drawings approved by all city departments and utility providers. Appropriate bonding for the completion of the project shall be provided by the developer owner. No work shall commence or begin until the civil construction drawings are approved. A final plat has been approved, completion bonding is in place, and pre-construction meeting has been held. I do want to address a couple things on this one, Mike. We were calling this out as a PDO. When I went back and researched it, I read through the planning agreement, the agreement with the city, and it talks a lot about a PDO, and it says MPDO a couple of times. So it references section 10-16 in 2008. So I went back and pulled 1016 in 2008, and that is an MPDO ordinance, not a PDO. So has this been reviewed as a PDO or an MPDO?
Hasn't been reviewed as a, been reviewed as a conventional subdivision, because that's what the plat.
Okay, yeah, and that goes back into their agreement where it's what, 1019E, where it goes into the simple subdivision for review, correct? Oh, never mind. I'm going back into the agreement, which I really shouldn't be going into. Commissioner Campbell actually pulled on my reins and said, "Whoa, cowboy," or "Whoa, pony," something. Anyway, because I was, just to give a bit of information, because I was forwarded both the attorney's letter to the requirements for the rezone, as well as forwarded the agreements. I went through all of that. Actually, when I go back to it and I look at what our basis is under Utah Code annotated 10-9-A and under the Tocqueville General Plan and our direction under the code, we actually don't get into the development agreement until it gets to final plat. So we're only going to take into consideration the general plan and the ordinances, correct? As it's called out in our guidance and by ordinance and by state law. So the agreement between the city, it does call out in the MPDO ordinance that we do review and confirm that they're in compliance with the agreement at the final plat. So right now we're just reviewing this as the.
Well, I guess I do take exception to that interpretation.
Okay.
we have to be guided by the development agreement preliminary plan, so we have some idea of what we're working.
Yep.
For instance, the development agreement specifically states that when the zone changes are required, that we went, if we didn't apply that, then this application would be rejected on the basis that it's submitted as an R112 flat and R120 zone. But for the development agreement and the interpretation from the city attorney, that's not the case, so that has to be considered.
Okay. The planning and zoning is the one that considers that, not the city council. Planning and zoning is the one that's going to be considering the development agreement,
Well, we're not considering the development agreement.
considering the
Considering how the development agreement applies.
literature inside of it. Okay.
Can I ask something there? In 2008, when this was originally done, who was the attorney? It was brought up, who was the attorney?
I believe it was Heath.
Because there was brought up in the last month's meeting that there may be a conflict of interest with Heath, represent both the city and SRC in this finding, and that's a bit of a consideration for me.
We still haven't received a second. Please.
Well, this is actually, actually the public portion of this, I'm sorry, but the public portion of this was the initial public forum. So if, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind addressing that part, and then if it draws further. Oh, that's right, okay.
You hit Tiger McFarland, 685 Westfield Road. You had stated that a traffic study had been done. May I ask where and when?
A month ago, it was submitted before our last planning commission meeting,
Okay, and how did they evaluate the traffic?
evaluated by an engineering firm on the capabilities of the roadway to handle the traffic that would be put on it from this development.
And the bridge at Ash Creek will handle that extra traffic? Okay, I live at the bottom of Sunset. There are times I can't get out of my driveway. So I'd like to really talk to this firm that did it and say, did you have counters out? Did somebody come and count the cars as they went? Connie Story is here with me tonight, and she's down there. She goes out every day to watch the kids get on the bus because the traffic is horrendous.
Before the occupancy can be completed, the bypass has to be completed also. So there's
Okay.
a complete secondary option for the traffic.
But that's before occupancy. Where on the building end of that does that bypass have to come in?
It's going to be at the city council level.
And currently on there, even to get their infrastructure work done, currently they're restricted not to use city streets on that. And I think they're discussing that with the city council.
So Westfield would be considered this. Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay, speaking as mayor.
Yeah, I was concerned after our last meeting about the conflict between interpretations of the original document. So I did contact a second attorney who has a ton of municipal experience. I haven't heard back from him yet. He's reviewing the information as we speak. Mr. Versamack supplied a bunch of it to him, and he's trying to look it over and see what he thinks. So, Fay Weber. Yeah, I haven't either. So, I'll check with him. He's also the sewer district attorney, so I'll hold his feet to the fire.
At this point, that we would proceed with the legal recommendation that we have from the city attorney, unless something different comes up, because that is the city's stance at this point. Okay.
So the future of this project going forward is all going to be coming forth as a conventional subdivision?
Well, I understand that the owners and developers are now taking a look at excluding this portion of the property for the rest of the property, and maybe looking at an Pdo. But they do want to proceed forward phase 1, 2, 4 here. They can push, get something started on the project and start generating some revenue.
Okay, answer me this, Mike. When you say that they'd be applying under the MPDO, correct? The basis for the MPDO would be the original overlay that's submitted, kind of showing the overview of the entire project, correct? And the development agreement agreed to with the city. That's your first step in the MPDO, correct? And that's why in the development agreement, even though it used both MPDO and PDO references, which totally confused me, it did specifically state section 1016 in the city ordinance, which at that time was MPDO. So that's where I'm trying to get. Is this coming in as an MPDO? If not, why is it not considered that?
I don't, this is coming in as a PDO to the current condition of this plan. This is coming in as a connection of the subdivision. Now, I do share this, the same
Confusion, yeah.
That's in the language of the development agreement, because it does talk about a PDO and it does talk about an MPDO.
Right.
So,
Well, and that's why when going back to the ordinance in 2008, I don't think there was a PDO ordinance. There was only MPDO. So,
with this being conventional subdivision, I mean, this reduces the amount of time and effort we have to put into
Right.
everything.
okay,
I mean, there are just so many points that you have to review here,
right,
and it either makes it or it doesn't.
okay.
Are they getting any benefits that a PDO or an MPDO would provide, or just the benefits of a traditional housing?
Well, if they apply for an MPDO,
I mean, for this specifically. Oh, so it doesn't really matter what we're calling, they're not getting any of the benefit, right?
yeah, they haven't asked for any density bonuses or anything. It's a standard
Right.
R112 subdivision. There's 96 lots. All of the lots meet the minimum requirements of the code. The streets are in compliance with the traffic study. So they agreed to bring in all the utilities that they need. We have also letters from the city of Tokyo Water Department and the special service district.
Okay, just for my information, if we put forward to approve this with the plat that's in place, that is the size and position of the lots that need to be built. They can't, if they want to change something, they have to come back for a change to that plat, correct?
Yep.
Well,
So
how-
even,
They would have to do a plat.
So I have a question about that, because this plat map we were given shows smaller lots than half acre, but in their letter they provided, they came back and said they adjusted along Mulberry, and they said Westfield, but I think they meant Sunset.
no, actually, because they're coming in as R112. That's what they're coming with this
Right.
plat. And that's where the attorney has said that they don't need to do, because of development agreement, they don't have to come through on a separate zoning, come in and apply for a zone change under the agreement.
Okay,
Okay, so,
but the response that they provided to the last meeting, to the public output, says, after much discussion, the developer feels that respecting the legal opinion of city attorneys that we should support, unless there's another, sorry, that's the wrong one. The potential buffer of R120
Right.
on the road, the border property owners.
right, and where that looks, if you look on the plot map, on the lots on Mulberry that are well, they're calling them out as R112. They're zoned R112.
They're R120,
No, the ones on Mulberry, they're R112 lots.
not South Mulberry.
No, hang on, right, on the Mulberry it's between Grassy and Lake,
Yeah,
or R112,
right.
okay? So their plat that they put forward in that area is R112 lots, so it's consistent with the homes that are already there. When you get wider than that, they have put lots that are equivalent to R120 to match the lots that are R120 wider, that's south of
South of Grassy
right.
Lane.
So they've gone out, although it's being zoned R112, they're going out and meeting the zoning of the R120, which they're bordering against, providing a buffer to transition to their R112.
What about along Sunset?
Same way, it's R120.
Okay, so maybe there's a wording issue in here.
So it
Yeah,
says-
it's actually pretty.
It says lots off Westfield and Mulberry, but I think they meant Sunset and Mulberry as far as the R120
Yeah, if you-
buffer.
You what? Yeah, yeah,
Is that
actually,
reflected on the plat map up here, though? Not that one, but so is this an amendment to the plat map we were just looking at?
no, it's the one that's on the board, that's just using diagonal lines showing the R120 lots versus the R1, showing the difference between the R112 and the R120, so.
Here we go. Here we go, right here.
Yeah, that's the R112s,
Uh-huh.
and everything outside of that, north and south, they're close to fit, yeah, most of them are toward R15,
Did you
115.
change that since our last meeting? You went
Yes.
back in and adjusted that?
Yes. Yeah.
So didn't it say in there that they were averaging about 16,000 square feet per?
Yeah.
Right.
Is that right?
Average.
Well,
What's
that's
that
the
with-
overall average when you take the R120s and all the R112s with an
Oh,
average.
so not average of just that phase two, it's the average of everything.
Well, it's the average of the entire, those
The
96
120 and the
lots.
112.
Right. So if you take every one of those lots, divide it by 96, the square footage of every one of the lots, divided by 96, that's where the 16 comes from. But they actually answered, and that was one of my main concerns, was the impact to the homes that are actually zoned R120, that when they bought the lot and built, they had R120 property behind them. And now they've accommodated that they're matching the zoning, matching the lot size, although it's still zoned R112.
I want to publicly thank the builder for working with the community. That was really good of you, and I noticed and want to give you full credit for all the extra stuff you did to bend over backwards and work with us, so thank you. It's up to Dan.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Matt Lou, representing developer. We're excited about being here. We're excited about doing something awesome in conjunction with the city. I think what we want to do tonight, besides, obviously what you're looking at, what we want to do tonight is go back and figure out what is it that we need to do with staff. If it is an MPDO, we want to go through that whole process and get it all nice and tight so that when we come back and do this again, which we will be here for the next 8, 10, 15 years, that it is a clearer and more smoother process, and it falls within guidelines of what's been approved under an MPDO, as well as what is the standards of the city. So that's where we're going to head after this. We've got a couple things, obviously it's a preliminary plat, we've got a couple more hurdles to get to, but when we get to that point where we're considering the final approval, we will address and iron every other concern that may be given to us as far as whether or not we get the final approval so we can move forward. But it is a big concern. Traffic's a big concern. The bypass road will take care of all of that. I want to say all of that because everyone's going through the front of this building now will now go through the bypass road, and that's going to be a big thing as far as protecting, the, how do I say, the historical local feel of downtown Tocqueville. So we take that serious, and we're pretty excited about trying to help that out. Thanks.
You know if it's the developer's intent to completely replace the development agreement with the MPDO?
We will go, there's a process with the MPDO, there's a threefold process. We will go through each of those steps to make sure that we match what we need to present moving forward. We do not want confusion moving forward. We want to make sure that it's, it's out there, it's transparent, the community understands and it knows what's happening, and at the end of the day, there's no confusion.
In some ways, the MPDO puts more requirements on the developer, and in some ways, it makes things much easier for them to adjust within their property line. So,
and then if we do the MPDO, that is kind of where that whole bonus density piece will come. It doesn't come without it.
That's the way to go, because this is much simpler for us if we just stay this way.
Understand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So that you were referencing, so that people kind of know what.
Do we need to read that in?
I
can do it if you'd like.
for the public, I think it would probably be a benefit.
Sure, I'll read that in. So after the meeting last month with the public concerns, the developers came back to answer some of those. So this is a summary of what they came back with. And this is referencing Toker Hills phases 1 through 4. So following is a summary of SRC Land Holdings LLC responding to residents and commissioners' concerns of a preliminary plat submittal of Toker Hills phases 1 through 4 that includes a total of 96 single-family residential building lots. In a planning commission meeting dated March 10th, 2021, there were approximately 25 residents in attendance, of which 10 of them stood at the podium during a public hearing to consider the approval of Toker Hill phases 1 through 4 preliminary plat and voiced the following concerns. Number 1, temporary construction access with minimal to no impact on city streets. SRC's response. Since March 10th, the developer has met with several residents in their homes, trucks, and ATVs discussing and driving in and around the immediate area of these proposed phases, looking for the best possible options to minimize the impact to city streets. The developer feels confident that as they work with the city staff and remain committed to protecting the safety of the residents that will be affected by the development of these initial phases, that this concern will be reasonably mitigated. Number 2, fire/emergency access and what part of the development process might be allowed, if any, prior to a second access to the new bypass road. The response. The developer has met with Deputy Chief Kevin Gildia from the Hurricane Valley Fire and discussed what would be allowed prior to the connections to the new bypass road. The developer was given approval to grade, excavate, and build pad-ready lots in Toker Hills 1 through 4, but no actual building permits will be issued until a second access route/road is reviewed and approved by the Hurricane Valley Fire Department and city staff. Number 3, legal opinion regarding R-1-20 versus R-1-12 zoning, clustering of dwelling units, and large-scale planned development overlay/master plan development overlay zone. Response. After much discussion, the developer feels that respecting the legal opinion of the city attorney is what we should support unless there is another formal interpretation that the city will add or replace that would adjust, change, or agree with what is currently stated. Number 4, consider a potential buffer of R-1-20 on the row of lots that border property owners off Westfield and Mulberry. And I believe that should be Sunset and Mulberry, not Westfield. Is that correct? Yeah.
Well, Westfield wraps around that.
They're not gonna, they're not. Is that correct? It should be Westfield, Sunset and Mulberry? That's where the R-120 lots were adjusted to on your plot. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I just want to get that straightened up. The response. The developer has redesigned lots in Toker Hills phases 1, 2, and 3 that specifically border lots off, I believe, Sunset and Mulberry to mirror the size of these current lots to serve as a transition strategy into the rest of the Toker Hills development. Note, even though Toker Hills is proposing an overall zoning of R-1-12, utilizing the clustering of dwelling unit strategy, we have only one lot that is 12,905 square feet, and the remaining 95 lots range from 13,600 square feet to 28,078 square feet. Number 5, drainage concerns from property owners below this plat and how that will be mitigated. Response. The state of Utah has a strict requirement under the low impact development practices that require all land development projects to maintain at least 80% of storm water on site, with the remaining 20% through proper engineering designs, thereby completely mitigating any concerns of storm water flowing to a neighbor that is in a lower elevation. Number 6, proposed church locations. Response. The developer is willing and prepared to work with various religious organizations to properly locate a site or sites for future churches to be built.
So again, we do want to thank the developer for the work they've done in both the public and the planning commission and staff's comments on this plat. Do we have any further comment from any of the commissioners or staff?
I think so.
I'll make well, we'll take action on this, but I will tell you in reading through your agreement, which I tried not to do before now, there for your final plat, there's more required of you than what's in here on where you've moved. You're doing R112. You've changed your base. You've got to tell not only your remaining ERUs, but also where you did it more dense than R120. You have to show what area you took those two from to put them into that area. So just as one thing, but there are a number of things through your development agreement that I'd like to make sure you have before you come in on a final.
So there is one other thing that we probably should touch on again tonight, and that is, so according to the Hurricane Valley Fire District, they cannot build any, there will be no building permits. They can start on the plats and land preparation. Where's that traffic going to go?
Well, and that's part of the issue that's needs to go. They need to propose a solution to the city council that you've got two issues. Number one, before they can do anything vertical, put any walls up, they have to have a secondary access before a building permit will be issued.
Yeah.
The other issue they have is in their development agreement where they cannot utilize construction equipment on city streets. And there's no bypass road yet. They have to work out with the city. How are they going to be able to do that?
I know they talked about last month, I don't recall who mentioned it, but they're saying that they proposed to go out and drop the heavy dirt moving equipment out there in a staging area, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I've been out there and I see that there's been some land cleared, I presume for that purpose. If you were to start building, if you start with dirt work and that, what kind of construction traffic are we looking out there on a daily basis for the operators?
So our last meeting last week, work meeting, we had a little discussion on access and how to get from point A to point B. It is our responsibility to come in with some of those options. Currently, right now, just to be totally transparent up front, we are looking at an entry maybe by the Westfield Bridge, either before or right after it, and going up Tank Road and coming across the power lines and then dropping back down to phases 1 through 4 in Toker Hills. That's kind of how we're looking at taking the heavy stuff through. Other than that, they'll be on site, trucks and everything, tractors and heavy equipment will be on site. It'll be basically the operators on trucks, pickup trucks that will go from here to where these heavy equipment is being staged.
I guess my question on that is, you're getting the heavy equipment in is one thing. If you're going to do infrastructure work, you're going to have concrete work, other things. So if you're going to put a batch plan in, this is something you're going to have to propose.
Yeah.
My concern is that unless you can utilize all the dirt out there, you're going to have to haul dirt in, which I'm not quite sure how you're going to quite do that. But that's something that is up to your group to try and work out with the city council. But it's a little bit challenging. I'll bring up the concerns on that road again. Is there's good vision right now because there's no leaves on those trees down by the bridge. And I think you made the statement that you came out of there and you could see traffic fine. That's in the winter. In the summer, when those trees are leaved out, it's very low visibility coming to see what's southbound on Westfield. So just to let you know that my concern would be if you're using that as a primary in and out, I don't know who owns those trees, but that would be a real safety. I'm a retired trooper, so that would be a real safety concern for me if you're moving construction vehicles and equipment in and out of there. So
we've been working, Scott's been working with the owners on the nearby area. We may have to look at on the opposite side where the fire hydrant is, possibly looking at that area if we're going that direction instead of crossing the bridge. If we're going through that and then build a low water help rebuild the low water dike there that's crossing the river for the 3-4 months that we can use. Yeah.
Oh, without who owns that? You'd have to get clearance from them.
It's engineers. Yeah. Again, these are just things that we're talking about. We haven't nailed down anything yet. It'll be what's best.
Got on a couple of those items.
So it gets you up in the morning.
You anticipate out there on a daily basis for the work, just the operators of the.
I think the operators, probably 6 at the most.
The concerns with some of the citizens were last month is they're anticipating, a whole horde of vehicles coming out there on a daily basis.
That could be a van shuttling them in.
Like good.
It's really when the type 2 asphalt, concrete, sidewalks.
All the dirt.
That's where the.
Yeah, that's
when we get
That's the
complicated.
mitigation.
And again, we're hoping with everything else, obviously in a perfect world, this would work. But we're hoping when we start, working with the city and doing the bypass road, that almost timing, we may be off by 60 days, maybe, as far as when completion to actually us needing, the heavy stuff to come in.
I actually raised a concern with them on the traffic study that it still showed 45% of the traffic when the bypass road's in coming down Westfield, which really shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue with Westfield I have is that there's at least two, and possibly 3 school bus stops on that road. And that's 3 buses at each stop. So you're talking 6 buses in the morning, 6 buses in the evening. So it's
Lots of little kids running.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there in the morning when the kids were kind of lining up, and I don't know what you guys do with your kids here, but they're all in straight lines right behind each other, not pulling hairs or anything. So I understand that. Yeah, we see that.
with a stick. So
yeah, it was impressive. Any other questions, commissioners? Thank you.
You have a question? Yeah. Well, yeah, because this was not on, this is an agenda item that wasn't in the public hearing, so.
We already had a public hearing about it.
Well, we had a public hearing, but it's an agenda item now, so it's, yeah.
I just need clarification on some language here.
Which document are you looking at?
The development, I'll just quote from it. The development agreement calls for all construction traffic to use the bypass road or alternate road. The fire department claims that they're going to approve building permits once secondary access is available. So does secondary access mean the road?
Yes, secondary access means a road that you can evacuate citizens on that will be capable of year-round having the heavy equipment from the fire. But it has to be, right, yeah. And the fire department has to sign off it before a building permit will be issued. But that is 2 separate items, so.
DC Young, I live in Tokerville down on Westfield Road, not next to the subdivision, but I certainly see some of the traffic on it that would happen. Regarding the use of the roads and making the turn and going up towards the tank road, the planning commission needs to be aware that the main line for our water is right there. And the main line that connects to the rest of Tokerville water system is going to be run over by whatever trucking, whatever systems go through there. It's buried in that little tight turn heading up the hill. Number 1. Number 2, it's going to be impossible for those folks to build out there before the bypass road is in without using some Tokerville city streets. So if I were the planning commission, I would recommend to the city council that somehow, some type of a recommendation needs to be made on changing the agreement, because that's a showstopper right now for everybody.
In the comments from the staff comments to the city council.
I'm sure it is. And I have a proposal to make that I doubt is in the staff comments, and that is, in their master planning system, it defines where the bypass road goes, doesn't it? One of the problems I have with the current one is that the bypass road goes on the east side of the reservoir, which, in my opinion, restricts Tokerville's ability to build to the west and cramps everything down somewhere between the Westfield Bridge or the Ash Creek Bridge and Old Church Road, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. A lot more smart thing to do for the ultimate city would be to move the bypass road to the other side of that little hill and get it away from the reservoir. And if the city council were to make an agreement that they do get a chance to use our roads, recognizing the wear and tear has to be compensated for a little bit, maybe they do need to use our roads after all. And this stipulation that is currently a showstopper for everybody could become an agreement that gives everybody a little better picture in the master overlay zone planning process. And I believe that we need to go out of our way to make things happen in Tokerville. But I don't think we should go out of our way to make Tokerville penalized because we're going out of our way. Thank you.
I have a question specifically about the drawing. Sunset Avenue, I'm sorry, Alice and Anthony. I have a home on Sunset.
Okay.
Sunset Avenue is shown as a 60-foot street. And down here in the key, it shows that the 60-foot street also has a 5-foot sidewalk on each side and then a 10-foot trail. Is that what Sunset is supposed to be? The sidewalks on Sunset have never been completed. Will it also have a 10-foot trail on the side of it as part of this plan?
We're not proposing to do anything on Sunset.
Is there a plan to complete the sidewalks for Sunset?
Well, that'd be on the developer that did the development of Sunset, on Sunset originally, wouldn't it?
Only on their spectrum. They're not developer in this case.
Well, that's what I mean, when the original developer, not this one, because they're not right on Sunset.
And the way Sunset has developed is, as development is turned on one side or the other, that development has been required for the additional street improvements. I don't believe there was ever a single development on Sunset.
Well, then it would,
It's a homeowner then, property owner.
yeah, it'd be the property owner, fault of the property owner then.
They did the curb and gutter and driveway entries, but no sidewalks.
Likely something that was not enforced before. It should have been done. Nothing I can think of.
Yeah, that's actually outside their development that they're currently doing, so.
Is there a better group that I should ask that question to of when sidewalks are?
Of what it was, of who was responsible for it and.
Yeah.
In the first place.
This guy right here.
Let me give you Mike's personal cell phone.
Okay, perfect.
So this is probably something we should bring up with city council work meetings.
Yeah.
Every first and third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m.
Okay, and then is there a group that can address what we can expect in, as far as Tokerville property tax increases?
That would be the city council as well.
Has anybody discussed that and I've missed it?
Did last year, right? We discussed
Oh,
that last year?
yeah, that's outside the scope of the planning commission, so it would be over at the city council meeting. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Do we have anything else? Do we have a motion? It's going to be an interesting motion, but do we have a motion?
I don't understand the complexities enough to make one.
I'm going to say one thing and then I'll make a motion. I think if this project was brought to the planning and zoning with the R112 lots without the development agreement, that it probably wouldn't pass an R112 zone change because you have another developer sitting here that did not get that R112. But since the development agreement's in place, and the city attorney has made the determination that you guys don't need to do the zone change, it kind of ties everybody's hands, I think. And also, I think that if the second opinion does come in from another lawyer and the zone change is required, or somebody else thinks it may be required, I think that we ought to maybe proceed with a zone change. Even, I don't know if you can do it after, but if the secondary opinion comes forth and it conflicts with the concurrent, I think that something may ought to be addressed with that. I don't know how that would happen, and I would have to fall back to staff. But with that being said, I would make a motion that we approve the preliminary plot plan on item recommend approval on item F7 with the staff recommendations, and with emphasis on all the discussion items with the road traffic and construction traffic. And am I missing anything else in that? No?
Well, the recommendation with the full compliance with development agreement and staff comments. Yeah, correct?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, we'll put it forward to the city council. I do want to follow up on Commissioner Campbell's one comment. And even though the city attorney says it doesn't have to follow the normal zone change agreement, it does still have to follow the current ordinances and the general plan. So there are areas in the general plan where it could be, there's wills and musts, and there's shoulds and mays. So depending upon how liberal you want to be on the interpretation or how conservative you want to be on the interpretation, it can be interpreted different ways, especially with comments that are in the general plan, which are generally fairly vague. I think you would have had, at least from my standpoint, it would not have made it through on an R112 had you not modified those lots. Just, yeah.
Dan, I have a question. At what point in time would it be appropriate for us, like maybe it's not even up to us, but maybe the city council to discuss some of the options that some of the citizens have brought up, like, hey, basically a win-win, you destroy the road, you fix the road.
Well, that's, if they destroy the road, they have to fix the road anyway. So that's kind of
If
built in, but
the
recommendations to change the agreement, which was that was brought up on, is purely a city council issue.
Okay.
We have no part in doing the development agreement. We just have to interpret it and apply it after it's done by the city council and the attorney. So the cleaner it is from them, the easier it is for us. So
I look
quit laughing, Mike.
forward to your MPDO submission.
And we will make the request again, which was made before, that we would be able to review those before they're agreed to, but that's not been the case. Anyway,
That's the same with the water too, right? Any effects to the city water?
that's ours. So unless it's part of the land use ordinance, we're very narrow in our scope.
But I think it's the same as far as city council.
Yeah. Okay. Now, it may not be a bad idea for you guys to sit through the next discussion, because it's actually the one on the MPDO, which was, we had submitted forward to the city council, which has come back with recommendations.
They like do a list, or they just tell you what they wanted done?
It was in city council work meeting, and they came back with two comments. One was changing the minimum acreage to 100 acres for an MPDO.
Is one of the links in?
Yeah, if you look at the one, if you look in the folder of the one that's got the date of 04/21 or 04/12, yeah. That's the one, and the only thing that are highlighted are the changes from what we had submitted to the city council. So you've got under 1015C-2 under interpretation, the one that, this actually wasn't a comment, this is one I wanted to put in before, but it's not the intent of the MPDO to replace the simple, conventional, or phase subdivisions as described in section 1019. The MPDO is intended for subdivisions with such size geographic challenges or complexity that could not be facilitated in a subdivision specified in 1019. So that's kind of narrowing it down, that if your subdivision fits in 1019, you really shouldn't be moving over to an MPDO. The other change is, and this one came in from Councilman Sipp, it essentially was requiring a buffer if it's a change, as an example of where you're putting R112 against an R120. If a perimeter plat line of an MPDO is adjacent to an established residential area or approved plat that is zoned R120 or larger, since all MPDOs have to come in as R120 now, the MPDO would be held to its underlying R120 zoning unless the developer can provide evidence that this would make it impossible to develop the RUs established in their base density. If the developer desires zoning which increases the density of their underlying R120 zone, a minimum buffer of R120 lots, a park or open space would be required to transition to a more dense zone. And the 100 acres came in from the attorney as well as it was council member Bringhurst and one other. Was it you, Gary? And council member Chase. Right.
So you said this one that you uploaded is the one that has already had the changes?
We've already done all our other changes, and the only ones highlighted in this are the ones that's been added since what we submitted to council.
What I would like to do also to clarify why we've got this again is we need to change the verbiage in here to clarify or not, or well, clarify regardless of whether we need to do a zone change or not in the MPDO. You remember that was a pretty big conversation, and what one was it that we were looking at? I can't remember where it was, but it's.
Well, see, and it's interesting because it actually in this ordinance refers you to 1019D, and it also refers you to 1019E, which is a simple subdivision.
Lot sizes, yeah. Well, just
right.
Just E.
But,
So just E and let me go back. Which one is it? 1015C5E. It says the lot sizes, minimum lots, and sitting requirements of the zoning district in which the MPDO lies shall not dictate the strict guidelines for the development within the MPDO, but shall serve to inform the developer of the importance of developing a project that will be in harmony with the character of the surroundings. An MPDO shall not be subject to a lot width and lot area requirements of the underlying zone. The lot width and size will be shown on the approved site plan as approved by a planning commission. So that's kind of like, I don't know, weave that line any way you want on that one for the.
The way I've always understood that is the zoning is an issue, when it's an MPDO, it's the density that becomes the issue with respect to under the R120 concept, they can change the density down to the zoning doesn't become part of it. The MPDO is like it's saying right there.
Well, what we've gone through in the past is, I think you've said that, correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody comes in with a plat, their first plat on their MPDO, they're going to identify what zoning they're requiring for all them spaces, and they're going to record their plat appropriately for that, right? And so they would have to do a zone change, or what do we got to do on the MPDO?
You start seeing MPDOs, if you ever see any, there's a big level down on the flat, you just don't see the side. And now they have quite a bit more discretion on the site plan.
Right.
They don't have to specify lot sizes. That's what they really do in the cluster.
right.
And of course, the clustering isn't necessarily R120, R112. It's
Multi-use.
multi-family,
Right.
it's apartment buildings, it's condos, it's those.
Didn't you say that each time they bring one of these site plans or plats that we would have to
Has to be our requirement.
has to meet the requirements? So are our requirements a zone change prior to, because
That depends on how the MPDO development
Is written. That's why I was making the statement, if it's written rather tight, it makes our job very easy.
Yes.
If it's not written tight, then those gray areas where it's.
Do you think that should be?
Right.
We don't need to worry about the zone changes.
And that's what's confusing about this.
That's the thing that's confuses, and we've had this conversation.
These MPDOs are going to have their own complexion.
Right.
And I would say that the complexion of the MPDO is going to be a reflection of the developer's desires and wishes. So, depending on what the developer has in the grand scheme of things, it's going to develop, or it's going to be a big player and have a place to really
Well, and it's kind of been my big concern is because where we've made it consistent now where all MPDOs have to come in at R120. At least now we're comparing apples to apples whenever an MPDO comes in. Their underlying zone comes in as an R120 for their base density calculation, which gives you the RUs for their total property. Where I get concerned is where their borders are against existing citizens' borders, against existing citizens' properties, because I think we've both got the developer's interest we have to look at, but we also have the interest of our current citizens to look at. And that's why I appreciated so much the change in what was done. The problem I think we're going to run into is some developers, I'd imagine, are going to track it and lay it out very well. What I'm worried about is when we get down to it, and if they leave those borders for the last part rather than the first part, and they come in and say, we have to come in at R110, or else we're not going to get all of our ERUs through. Yeah, and that to me creates a problem because we're obligated to allow them their ERUs, at least the way the current development agreement is done and the Pdo Ordinance is done. So that's got to kind of be a monitored so you don't end up with a bunch at the end that you're trying to clump in. So it's
you're not going to have a developer, or I would find it hard to believe that
he's going to do that.
Here's where we're developing.
Right.
He's going to come way over here and do
Right.
it. He's going to want to hook on the utilities.
Right.
The closest point to the access.
Right.
He's going to start to develop away from what they already have. So,
well, and the other part I was trying to get into is when it gets into the middle of away from the outside edges where they're having a direct impact on other people's properties. I'm not that concerned because I think it's going to be in their best interest to do a good job on how they lay it out and the scenic view of the property. So it's that outer border that I'm always most concerned about that impact our existing citizens, along with their, the traffic, the water, everything else. But,
Yeah, prior.
yeah.
When they
Right.
submit these bases of their layouts.
Right. So
It's the consensus that the zone change will not be required as with plats or anything. Because that's the conversation we keep running into like all the time. Because then, if we have an MPDO and the first submission comes in and it's all down to multi-use or multifamily and okay, do we need a zone change?
it would not be beyond the normal possibility that in an MPDO, you could see a subdivision plan come in. And if that were the case, then they might have to do a zone change, depending on how the development agreement is.
So the answer is maybe.
well, and keep in mind that the general plan actually encourages a clustering and the
Yes, yeah.
the low-income housing and stuff. So it's not
When they come in front of
Right.
us the next time, because it's coming, that what our procedure is, because it's not in this
Right.
by any means. It doesn't state it, it's very vague in that.
This is somewhere in the MPDO ordinance, it talks about the conceptual plan.
Right.
Preliminary plan, final
it's
plan.
three pieces. Yeah.
But are you saying that someone could submit a subdivision within an MPDO?
Right. They could file a convention of subdivision in the MPDO.
It still counts against their ERUs the same way. It's actually, the MPDO actually gives them a lot of flexibility.
Subdivision and likely have the other idea of all that money. The development agreement says that they have to meet this requirement.
I guess we don't.
So I guess technically, if they came in under the MPDO on this one, it wouldn't have been a request to go to R112. It would have just been, here you go, approve it or deny it, right? So So anyway, getting back to the point that where we were at on the MPDO with the 3 changes, the one change that's pretty much insist going to the 100 acres, I think is a fairly easy one. That is going to require another public hearing because it is a significant change. So the other 2 is the buffer zone and just a simple statement of if your subdivision doesn't require an MPDO, you should stay in your simple phased or conventional subdivision. So I guess if you've reviewed that, the question would be, is that something we would move forward with on that language? I'd submit it to the attorney to make sure that we're all right on it, and then schedule another public hearing.
That's straightforward and covers everything that we missed.
Ruth, can you switch to the buffer zone? Would you make it? This one?
Yeah.
He's got it right here.
Just scroll, yeah, almost there, right there.
So it's essentially saying if you're coming in with an underlying zone of R120, if you're bordering right up against an R120 subdivision, you need to stay R120 or create a buffer zone before
So
you
the
transition to a more dense area.
The buffer zone would just be the same size lots, not like,
Well, it
not
could,
like a green belt.
no, it could be the same size lots. You could put a park in. It's just something,
It could be anything.
right, doing a transition to the more dense area. And it would be left to the developer, what do you want to put in? Because especially in an NPDO where you're getting density bonuses for open space, for trails, for parks, that may be an area where you want to put a transition in and put a park in so you can get some density bonus. So, but it's up to the developer. All we're trying to do is protect the existing citizens that were here first. And we're only talking about a border around the exterior perimeter of the MPDO. So.
I like it.
So this has to go back to the attorney and then.
It'll go back to,
Then a public
it'll go back to Attorney Snow just for his blessing on the wording. And then we'll put it forward for another public hearing. So I'll try and get that done.
So if we do that next month, would it be able to go to the city council?
Did it go to their work? Well, it doesn't, because now they won't do anything that they don't review in work meeting first. So it's going to be 2 months down the road before it hits. But the thing is, at least as the way it's explained to me, is if it is in the process of a change, correct me, Mike, then that is what we work on. So.
I like it.
Okay. You still awake?
What's that, Mike?
Yeah, I was thinking about his maybe, but.
One other question.
Shoot.
We keep bumping up against this. We've got to protect the existing. How do we consider a piece of property with one by one? But the adjacent property is vacant, but it's zoned by 112. What do you do there?
Well,
if that owner of that property comes in and wants to develop, are you going to tell him that his first 12 lots have to be R120?
It's already zoned R112.
If it's R112, then the MPDO can do R112.
Even if it's not an
I'm not
MPDO.
talking about an MPDO, we're just talking about. So you're making a distinction between standard zoning and MPDO.
Correct. This is strictly in the.
Why are you doing that?
Well, part of this, Mike, is because if you go into the general plan and you go into, there's a couple different places where it talks about, can't remember the exact wording of it, where you say consistent with the existing what's there. Now you can interpret that as in zoning, you can interpret that into commercial versus residential, but that's where you can either have a conservative or a liberal interpretation to it. I choose to view that as if there's a residential there, if there's a homeowner there, then they're R120 and you're zoned R120. That first property they bought with the expectation that property next to them is R120 unless it goes through a formal zone change. Where on an MPDO, you don't have to go through a formal zone change, and that's why I'm differentiating between the two. If you're going on a simple subdivision, they have to go through the formal process of a zone change, where the public can come in, we can take that into consideration. On an MPDO, they don't need to do that. They could come in and put whatever right next to that. And I think there's got to be some layer stating that you need to say, at least for a row of homes or a park or something, with the homes that are there. And that's why I'm trying to differentiate between an MPDO, because it's not held to the same standards as a simple subdivision.
Okay, well, here's my concern.
Okay?
Here's something that everyone needs to be aware of. The city council, as a governing body, has wide sweeping powers when it comes to zone change.
Okay.
I mean, they can deny the zone change because the road out in front's got gravel on the shoulder. I mean, they really don't need the
Okay.
reason to deny a zone change.
Right.
On the flip side of that, property owners have a vested interest in the property zone.
Right.
And so if you start trying to put too much of the burden on that, or on them, then you could have a legal challenge.
I'm not telling them they have to go larger than their existing zone. I'm telling them they can do R120.
I'm thinking what
If they go in next to R1, they don't have to do R1, but their underlying zone is R120. So they just can't go R112 or R115. And I'm not impacting their ERUs, because their ERUs are based on R120.
Well, as long as you're comfortable with your opinion,
I'm
not held in court.
Well-
I'm saying that when a person buys a piece of property, they have their vested in the zone of that property.
Okay.
That's why we have a legal
Well, that's-
counsel, right?
And they get an MPDO, they're vested in the rights of the MPDO, and they're finding out now.
Well, and that's where I'm going to send it to the attorney, and he may tell me, no, you can't do that. So I'm taking into consideration the feedback I got from the city council and the feelings I had initially anyway. So
I'm good with it. I just want everybody to be aware of it.
anytime you smile at me, Mike, it worries me. I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. But we'll submit it to the attorney, and he may say, no, you can't do that. And I'm fine with that. If legally we can't do that, I'm fine with that. I will still encourage it from the developer. What? Right.
It's pushed through because I think there's some MPDO applications surfacing on that.
Well, I'm sure there is.
Better we get this amended and tied up and re-modified.
Right. Well, and if you guys don't mind, we've got two people that would that are entered into MPDOs or may enter into MPDOs. Would you have real heartburn over that? Either? Yeah.
Over this code change?
Yeah. Well, you're not applying for an MPDO. I don't care what you think. There are two people in this room that I would like to have their opinion on.
I didn't know anyone was behind.
I know.
I don't think it's so reasonable.
But
What was your
it's like
input?
an MPDO. It's done, the city
Right.
approved it, we're done.
Right, I understand that.
How many more acres do you want to put in?
I don't want any, I just asked a simple question. If you're building up against another R1, if you wanted to put R112 in, would you have heartburn if the neighboring properties were R120, as it was in this one, of putting a buffer, a row of R120 or a park or something in?
I don't believe that a buffer is in the code, is a requirement.
It isn't, it's not at this time. It would be.
But
Just
if
for an
if you were an individual in your right mind, buying a piece of property, you would do your due diligence in everything on that piece of property. So, for example, you're buying a house,
Yep,
and let's say it's a house that is, well, we'll use an example of what happened tonight. You buy a house and the city allows for the condition, like a use as a nightly rental. If you didn't want to live in a community that allowed for the potential of a nightly rental to be in the house next door to you, then go find another community to live into.
I think
I'm with you on that.
I think
What-
where Dan is, like, if, as long as I'm understanding this correctly, just so I can get caught up here with Alphonse Leap, is, that primarily the issue stands when somebody does purchase that property and they have an R120, right? And across the street is zone 20,
No, their backyard, the property to their backyard.
or even their backyard.
Doesn't mean, or let's say it was MU20 behind you, that means you have one building for every 20 acres, which is what everything, that is the default designation on a piece of property that was brought into annexation.
Right.
Or it was the default designation of property that wasn't in a built out area, which all of this property out this way, that's what it was. And anyone who owns a piece of property has the right to change the zoning. If there is a zone that is, let's say that Tokerville City passes the zoning availability of let's say it's 5,000. You can have a piece of property close to 8,000 because that's a little bit more realistic, or 6,000. Because you have those in St. George. It is only 6,000 square feet, and that is what your home goes on. It doesn't mean that you have an acre of ground, but that is what it is. And if you don't want to have the potential of somebody making a zone change in the community that you're thinking of living in, then maybe that's not the community that you should be living in. So right now, you've got R120s, the smallest residential zoning that you have in Tokerville is R112. That is a quarter of an acre. That is huge. And a lot of people can't even take care of a quarter of an acre. Why would they be able to take care of a half of an acre? Well, they can, and they can dump their old cars, their kids' equipment, they know what to do. They can dump that all on there, and unless you live in a community that is going to actually go after them for that,
With code enforcement.
you just get to leave.
So what I was saying was that I think he's not, I'm just interpreting from my perspective, but not a legal standpoint, maybe not even a logical standpoint, but maybe more of an ethical view of somebody who purchases that property and thinks that the property behind them is going to be spread out that way. And then somebody comes in and puts a huge high density multifamily on an R, 110 or whatever, they're just stacking people as tight as they can go like sardines. That is not really the community that they thought they were going to be living in when they purchased that property.
When it was up for sale, or made an offer to the individual who owned the property, so they could buy it with you.
Okay.
Well, you're missing what I'm
So
saying, but
No, I am not missing the point.
Okay, where we're going is I'll submit it to the attorney. He'll either tell us it's good to go or it's not. Now, the last thing we had on here, because we took the signs off, is the Pdo ordinance. And I put one together, but the real question to me is, and I'm going to throw this at Mike, if we have the MPDO, I don't know if I see the value of having a PDO. Our current PDO is an introduction with nothing below it. So I've taken some of the stuff out of the MPDO and put it over into the PDO without putting all the requirements or the ability to get a density bonus into a PDO, just trying to put a format in it. But my question is, if we have an MPDO, we have a simple subdivision, a conventional, a phased, and an MPDO, do we need a PDO ordinance?
My only question on the PDOs is there any other agreements that the city has with anybody that calls out a PDO that we need that ordinance for?
Do you have something that has
I don't know, there's nothing in what we have that we can rely on.
Well, there's nothing, there's an introduction in that ordinance currently, so I can't imagine somebody signed up to it if there's nothing in it. But Mayor?
The MPDO has a limit of
100 acres.
100 acres. If you've got less than 100 acres, can't do it.
Unless it's something with the property, if you read the ordinance, and I'm not changing this is the original to the ordinance. A master plan development overlay shall be required for the developments in excess of a minor partition of the parcel 100 acres in size or greater, characterized by slopes in excess of 15%. On parcels less than 100 acres, an MPDO may be authorized if one or more of the following conditions exist. Unusual physical features of the property or surrounding area prohibit development under the standard provisions of this title while preserving a physical or terrain feature or view, coordinator, or importance of the neighborhood. 2, the property cannot be feasibly developed under the standard provisions of this title, particularly in the case of a small undeveloped parcel surrounded or partially surrounded by developed property. The development under the MPDO regulations is more creative, unique, and desirable to the community. The property or parcel proposed for the development is under unified title with one unified description. So there are, if there's something unique to do with the piece of property, it doesn't need to be the 100 acres. But if it's just a flat piece of property with no unique characteristics driving that it wouldn't work under a phased or simple subdivision, then it would not fall within the MPDO.
It would be really sad to actually do away with the ordinance that we don't have to do.
That we what?
It'd be really sad to do away with the ordinance that we
Is that sarcasm?
don't. Yes.
A lot of sarcasm.
Okay, so let me throw something out.
Okay.
I'm thinking of a specific parcel of ground, which it's less than 100 acres
Okay.
in size. It has a very unique, geographical formation smack dab in the middle of it. So, one, this wouldn't qualify for the MPDO as if you take to the 100 acres. And because of that,
Well, actually, in one of them that I just read, it did characterize for that. Unusual physical features of the property or surrounding area prohibit development under the standard provisions of this title, preserving a physical or terrain feature or view corridor of importance to the neighborhood. So actually, that's where that would fall into.
But how other parcels are out there that aren't in units of 100 or 80 or 60?
Well, then, but, and in reality, with the cost impact, and you know this better than I do, with the cost impact that an MPDO puts on you, with the professional people that have to be hired for it, and the other financial drivers of an MPDO, if it's under 100 acres, that's the reason Wall pulled away from it, because he decided what the cost of doing that.
Of doing an MPDO?
Yeah.
So, but you're wanting to get rid of the PDO?
Correct. I'm asking the question. I'm stating where in reality it hasn't been used because it's only an introductory paragraph. There's nothing below that in our ordinance.
Multi-family housing has never been used, but you have to zone for it.
I'm saying, does the
Commercial has to be used. You have to zone for it.
I think that the city council will start looking at a mixed use. Something too.
Well, and I agree with that, but I'm trying to find the benefit of the PDO, and I've read other cities' ordinances under the PDO, and I don't see, if you've got that's where I was trying to get at, is trying to find a justification to have both. I'm having a hard time finding.
Yeah,
So
didn't we discuss this in our February meeting? I think.
I told everybody to read it. I don't know if anybody did. So that's kind of where I'm at, is do we want to start putting teeth into it because there are none right now, or a body to it? Or do we want, if we've got the MPDO, do we want to do away with the PDO? That's my question. Then that would be a decision from the city standpoint of, is there a real benefit, or does the MPDO with the different characteristics where you can go less than 100 acres? If the property meets those conditions, you can do less than 100 acres. If that condition's in there, why do we need the PDO? That's where I'm trying to get at.
My recommendation would be to strike it.
I think it would be good if the city council had a recommendation.
Well, that's what we would do from here, because we're going to send forward the MPDO, and that's where I'm trying to get from the planning commission and staff is input on, do we want to start working up the PDO, or is the MPDO sufficient and we do away with the PDO and we start looking at what other ordinances we may need in multiple use and other areas?
If you're going to do away with it, now would be the time amending the MPDO, you could also do an amendment.
Agree. And it'd be a public hearing on both, I would think.
So Dan, remind me on it's been a while since I've read on subdivisions. You've got a simple subdivision.
Yeah.
It's generally one, breaking one parcel into maybe three.
We've got three. You've got the simple, the conventional, and the phased. Your next step would be the PDO and then the
So
MPDO.
your phase could be anywhere from.
Well, it'd be like Trail Ridge is a phased, correct? Yeah. Until it officially comes in under the MPDO, this would be a phased.
And by the way, this will not come in.
This plat right here? Well, right.
If this gets approved, this is going to be a standalone R112 plat. And they'll have to focus the balance of the property on MPDO.
But it removes the ERUs.
And they'll be dealing with.
Yeah, they'll lose the ERUs because that's done on the base density, the R120 for the entire parcel. So,
But if it's gonna be in that, then it's going to be a zone change requirement. That's what I understand what you're saying, the ERUs, of course, but I don't know why.
What you would do is,
why what?
you need to take the remaining acres and then you would start all over with the density bonus. You would completely
Well-
start over. Your ERUs would probably, you're gonna probably get a higher density, so.
Okay, we were considering this for our low density.
Well, this would just be eliminated. You just take the remaining acres of the total 1,700 or whatever is left, and then you would start the whole calculation over again. Super easy. Well,
based
not
on
super
the
easy.
remaining ERUs, not with the.
Right. Yeah.
If,
That does make sense. I'll get it.
Well, you're still on your base ERUs, so it's, I mean, you're not going to lose anything, but you bring in the ability to get a density bonus for the additional items that you offer to the city.
I guess it doesn't matter, because, I just want to make sure it's part of our whole master plan community, and it's in our CC&Rs, but that's a separate document.
Yeah.
That's separate.
Yeah, and your CC&Rs are required for your final on this one, so.
Right.
if you switch it to an MPDO, you have a better chance of getting more ERUs, if you want to call them ERUs.
Will you quit trying to sell that?
It's the same thing.
All right, so I guess the final decision is amongst, with staff input. Gary, what you, from the city council input, what's your thoughts on the PDO?
Is there a cost difference to a developer?
Right now, our PDO says nothing, so it's whatever we wrote in our PDO, because we'd have to.
I'm looking at making an exception. If you have 100-acre situation, you've got somebody with 50 acres that wants to.
Well, so that's why you read this other thing. So if you, let's say you have less than 100 acres,
Yeah.
and you have a special geological, let's just even say you fall under the hillside ordinance. That's a physical or a geological or geophysical something that you
Right.
can maybe bring the MPDO in.
Right.
It would be a decision that would be brought forth and requested. So
I'm just looking at, from the cost standpoint, Wall decided he wasn't going to do an MPDO because of the cost.
The driver is, you have to have 5 different professional licensed people that are licensed with the state. There's a number of items in the MPDO that are required.
So he defaulted to subdivision.
Right.
Okay, but could a PDO have been an option for him? And if so, would he?
Well, let me read you our entire
I see it right here.
PDO ordinance
So
is that paragraph right there, which is an introduction.
Will that paragraph save him money? If that was not going to-
There's nothing there to do anything yet, so.
Then I'm okay. I can get rid of the PDO.
Do we,
That's the only thing that I can think of that would be a factor.
okay, so we,
Save you some money.
what I'm looking for from you guys is a motion on the MPDO on the 3 changes that are in there, and a motion on the PDO.
It's just a discussion item.
Or discussion, so we'll just put it
Discussion item,
forward.
so yeah.
Okay.
That's my,
we need to.
So we'll schedule both for a public hearing on, but we are agreed that we're gonna do away with PDO or no?
Yes.
that's my feelings, yes.
You make a report to the council if you want to do it. It's a PDO.
Right.
The council says, yes, go ahead and make that and do it.
Right, then we do a public hearing on doing, right. So I'd like to, if we're gonna do that, then I'd like to do them both on the same night with public hearings on them. So I'll get with Heath on the one, and make the recommendation to the city council that we're gonna recommend doing away with the PDO. Okay? Are we good? Do we have any other items that need to be brought up? Well, Ruth, I tried. We didn't make 8 o'clock, but we did make
I'll make a motion
8:25.
that we adjourn.
There you go.
Second.
Second? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 8:28.